Hi everyone, welcome back. Good to see you again. You're looking well. Get yourself a drink and a seat up front. We're going to get started. Because yes, there's a show. It's all been happening and now you want to know. But before we can start, we must begin with hello. My name is Sean, your host and fellow. Now grab hold your beverage, your mind just as quick. We're building up for our best sip. So join me now for the greatest pleasure where we unwind this world together. It's time now. It's time for the sip. Let's do it now. Let's do it quick. Go! Delicious. Well, I wonder if there's any science news. Look, Neuroscience News has an article here. Laughter rewires brain architecture and lowers cognitive load. The comprehensive neurodevelopmental analysis established that laughter is a complex biological engine that directly shapes early brain growth, emotional resilience, and parent-child neural synchrony. The research utilizes insights across biology, psychology, and sociology to demonstrate that joy and humor act as an immediate antidote to systemic stress. By triggering neuroplasticity, lowering cortisol, and downregulating cognitive load, structural play and laughter fundamentally update traditional early education and parenting paradigms. Right. So, do you mean to tell me that laughing makes you feel better and more relaxed? Well, you could have just asked Scott on that one. Meanwhile, in the UK, former Prime Minister Tony Blair says Labour needs a fundamental reset. This is from Ground News, by the way. On Tuesday, former Prime Minister Tony Blair published a 5,600-word essay warning Labour is playing with fire with the country's future, arguing that the party lacks coherent policy and needs a fundamental reset less than 2 years into the Starmer government. The intervention comes amid brewing leadership crisis in Makersfield, where Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham is positioned to challenge Sir Keir if he wins the June 18th by-election, while former Health Secretary Wes Streeting claimed Tuesday he has 81 backers for a leadership bid. Rejecting personality-focused solutions, Blair stated that the government's principal problem isn't Keir's personality, but the absence of a worked-out coherent plan, and criticised the Workers' Rights Bill, and National Insurance rights as creating headwinds, not tailwinds, for British businesses. Cautioning against premature leadership change, Blair warned that trying to force the Prime Minister out without a clear policy direction is not a serious way of conducting ourselves, emphasising Labour must develop a coherent policy before pursuing leadership contests. Beyond internal party dynamics, Blair framed Labour's policy crisis within Britain's deteriorating global standing, warning the country risks relegation from the Premier League of Nations, and that simply reversing Brexit isn't the answer, as Britain remains too weak to reset EU relations. So I don't think I'd be saying this, but I agree with Tony, but only in part. Forcing a PM out without a clear plan of what to do is actually a bad idea from the party's point of view. At the moment, most of the country would disagree, though, and want Keir out regardless. I think even with the change of leadership, people have just had enough of the two main parties, so it probably won't matter if they have an actual plan, just that it'll probably be much better for them if they do actually have one. They're probably still going to lose, but maybe not as badly if they have some sort of recovery plan. So, Makersfield is the next big target for all the parties. It is a must-win constituency for Labour, as Andy Burnham is in the running there. Andy Burnham is the current Labour Mayor of Greater Manchester, as mentioned in the story, and he's running so he can actually have a path to becoming Prime Minister. So it is for a ministerial seat that they're competing for. If Andy wins, then he would have to give up being the mayor, but if he loses, then he has no real other routes to becoming PM at the moment. And Andy is one of the favourites among Labour voters, so he's very likely to be in the running for the top job if he can pull it off. Wes Streeting's not as favourable. In fact, he's got a net negative rating in comparison to Andy. So, however, Labour's not the only party targeting Makersfield. It has also become a major focal point for Restore Britain, Rupert Lowe's party. Restore Britain won everything in it by an absolute landslide in their own backyard down south in the recent local elections a couple of weeks ago. Makersfield is up north in Greater Manchester, though, which is, new territory for them. If they perform well, it could send shockwaves through the political system. Andy has responded to Tony Blair's letter, though, and still from Ground News. Burnham and Streeting accused Blair of ignoring inequality as they hit back at the XPM. Criticising existing net zero targets and welfare spending, Blair argued current policies risk outpacing defence expenditure, preventing economic growth if large incapacity benefit increases continue. Labour politicians Andy Burnham and Wes Streeting criticised the intervention for failing to address inequality, with Streeting arguing the striking weakness at the heart of Sir Tony Blair's intervention is the lack of mention of inequality. Burnham argued that the essay fails to understand that people are struggling to afford basic necessities, adding people don't think the centre has delivered for them in terms of their lives. Therefore, they've gone further to the extremes. So, clearly Andy read Tony's letter and understood it, took it on board, what Tony was saying, by focusing on inequality. The very thing Tony is saying that needs to be abandoned in order to save Labour. And when Tony is basically the godfather, Don of Labour, Andy Streeting to be rejecting like this is quite interesting. It starts showing some potential splintering in Labour. No doubt there are many in the party who can see the writing on the wall and really want things to go in a new direction, because the current destination they are promoting is not really making it with a majority of voters anymore. Greater Manchester is, like many cities in the UK, seeing a huge change in demographics. The city of Manchester is very close to 50% white now. Back in the 1990s, that was nearly 90%. So a 40 percentage point drop in 30 years, basically, which is quite a staggering change. This has become a fundamental concern for the majority of voters in the country, which is why the parties like Reform and Restore are actually doing quite well at the moment. That is what Tony Blair is trying to tell these guys, but their voter base, especially in the cities, has changed. Andy, being mayor, is probably thinking about his own position if the Makersfield election doesn't go to plan. Wes Streeting also has been touted as a potential successor, but as we mentioned before, he's really unpopular with the Labour base in comparison to Andy. The far left is getting behind the Greens, and everyone else is shifting right at the moment. So they're right about things going to the extreme, but it's going more left of Labour and then to the centre for everybody else. You've got so more people leaning right now to the Reform and Restore parties that were in the centre. It's also worth remembering that Tony Blair, Keir Starmer, Wes Streeting are all proud Fabian members. And he's not confirmed his membership yet, but has spoken several times at their events and appears in numerous publications from them. Meanwhile, over in computer game land, this computer game cuts dementia risk by 25%, and it's free. Reports Will Stoddart of the Daily Mail. It may not sound like medicine, but playing a computer game could cut your risk of dementia by 25%, a new study has found. The game, Double Decision, is designed to improve the brain's processing speed, which controls how quickly we take in and react to information. Clearly, I need to play it a bit more. This is a skill that tends to slow with age, but it's also a key marker for cognitive decline that can indicate an increased risk of dementia. In the game, a vehicle flashes up on the screen for a split second while the road sign appears at the edge, surrounded by distracting images. The player has to identify both. It was developed in the 1990s by US researchers to improve the processing speed in older drivers. A 2010 study involving 908 drivers and published in the Journal of American Geriatric Society, just 10 hours of practice using Double Decision, cut their crash rate in half over the next 6 years. In a landmark study, almost 3,000 participants aged over 65 were split into 3 groups, each training a different brain skill: memory, reasoning, and processing speed by playing Double Decision. All three groups train for around an hour twice a week for 5 to 6 weeks, and about half of each group then had 4 booster sessions 11 and 35 months later. Researchers analysed participants' medical records 20 years after the brain training ended, and the findings recently published in the Journal of Alzheimer's and Dementia show those in the double decision group with a booster session were 25% less likely to have been diagnosed with dementia than any other group. This is very impressive. So, yeah, in general, I'm a massive fan of gaming. I've always been a gamer myself. I remember my dad bringing home a Pac-Man style arcade machine when somebody asked him to repair it one day, and when I was probably about 10. I was already hooked on computers at that point, so it was like pure candy cane sugar for me. It may look like a waste of time to some, but games are much more interactive and challenging than, like, say, watching the TV. You have to think about what you're doing and when you play them, and when you play them in order to win. Even a game like chess, which only has 6 types of pieces and fairly limited range of movement, requires you to think strategically about everything. And it's obviously a well-known mental competitive sport, but it's really accessible to anybody. I'd highly recommend playing it. Basically, there are a lot of games that can push speed decision aspect too. It's not just the double decision. You often need to make split-second decisions to succeed, and it's only through practice that you can get better. That mental training is very similar to what the guys would have gone through with the double decision game. And some games are just a pure test of mental fortitude. I've certainly played a few games in the past where I've been stuck trying to get past a particular section for weeks. And you have to be quite determined to get through those, maybe trying dozens, if not hundreds of times to get through. And that does build mental resilience. Games can be a fantastic way to learn as well. And there are a lot of simulators out there which are incredibly realistic and which will teach you a lot about whatever's being simulated. I played a lot of flight sims back in the day and really learned the mechanics of flying through it, even though I haven't actually done the training myself. I did do a little. I was halfway through a microlight pilot's license course a while back, but I understood all the mechanics enough that I could progress quite quickly. And in fact, even for pilot license training, you can actually use your hours in certain flight sims towards your overall pilot score, your license score. So even the authorities and people who actually approve these things think that there is some value there. And not to mention also professionals use them all the time. So there's got to be some value there. So there is a social aspect to online as well. If you play with friends, I know a few people who have met someone online and gotten married. So running terrified from a horde of zombies can be quite the bonding experience. Meanwhile, over in Bangladesh, viral fame spares Donald Trump buffalo from Eid sacrifice. A rare 700-kilogram albino buffalo named Donald Trump became an internet sensation in Bangladesh ahead of the Islamic festival Eid al-Adha, due to its unique cream-coloured skin, pink nose, and a distinctive tuft of flowing blonde hair. The government stepped in at the last minute to halt the animal's scheduled ritual slaughter, with Home Minister Salahuddin Ahmed ordering that the buffalo be spared from sacrifice due to the heightened security concerns and overwhelming public interest. The buyer, who had originally purchased the buffalo for the religious holiday, was financially compensated, allowing local authorities to safely take the animal into official custody on the outskirts of Dhaka. The viral buffalo was permanently relocated to Bangladesh National Zoo, where caretakers have prepared a separate enclosure and designed a specific handler to look after the rare animal. Or designated, I should say, a specific handler to look after the rare animal. So this is just a funny, light-hearted story. It's great to see the cow has been saved, and no doubt it will bring a few tourists into the zoo. The pictures of the cow do look a little unusual, and it is just a regular cow with a golden Buffon. And it does make you think of Trump's signature style. But I know what that cow said when he arrived at the zoo. Move over, there's a new king in town. And that kind of brings me to the end of my notes. So one thing I will mention is that tomorrow I will be doing another live stream. Last week I had a few technical hitches, so it was not set up properly and it didn't go out to all the platforms. I was only on Locals and Rumble, I think. But I did upload the video separately afterwards to the others. So the whole show was about the King's Speech. It was quite long. It was about just under an hour. It probably won't be as long tomorrow, but hopefully I will have everything worked out this time. Which kind of leaves me with my final thought, and that is go and learn to play a new game. It will stretch your skills, give you a mental boost, and go a long way to keeping your brain fit. I need to go play some more, by the way, and you may even enjoy it too. And with that, I will wish you well, say see you later, and say cheers.